Mark Bell's PowerCast, sponsored by thepowermagazine.com, howmuchyourbench.net, and BSN, makers of NO Explode. Look for BSN products at bodybuilding.com. Alongside Silent Mike and Jim McD, here's your host, Mark Bell.
Can you hear yourself now?
I'm going to try to officially squash something.
Okay.
Hopefully it's your fucking face.
Hashtag gains, that's old. Stop using it.
Okay.
Oh, I know. Well, everyone takes a picture of a donut and they write gains.
And I get
Somebody went off about that the other day.
it's an ironic joke, and I get it, like it's a kind of a flexible dieting thing, and it's kind of like
that? I saw someone.
Do you know the Gains guys? Is like the Hodge twins. Have you seen those guys on YouTube? And they're pretty funny, but they're played out too. Gains is played out. Stop saying it.
Well, we're in a weird time right now where people use a word or two, and then it catches on, for like a few months.
Yeah.
But if you remember, our boy Dwayne, The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
He used to come out every single week, and he had something new every single time.
That's why he's the
He
hottest.
had his like catchphrases, that he stuck with that were great.
Yeah.
And then Stone Cold, too. Both of them. And no one's ever matched that shit. Those guys came out with different shit every single time.
The majority of their promo would be different, and then they'd end maybe with, Austin 316 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or jabroni. He would say jabroni, which is just a word.
Smackdown Hotel.
Yeah. Yeah. Lay the smack of down.
Yeah.
Candy ass. Shove my boot. I'm going to take my boot and shine it up real nice.
Rudy Poo candy ass.
That's the best. Rudy Poo. I would listen to that over and over. Rudy
a lot of
Poo.
that stuff, a lot of the stuff he made up, but a lot of stuff he took from. He had a crazy coach.
Oh yeah.
When he was at the University of
Miami. Well, that's like you.
Yeah.
You were like Tanavascular, right? Didn't you say?
Yeah, that was
your
my wrestling coach.
That's
yeah,
great.
he said.
We need to get him on the show.
He said he asked me one time. He's like, he said I can get this straight. He's like, what are you gonna do over the Christmas break? We had like 2 weeks off, which is like unheard of. We never had any time off. And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm just going to, we just had Jake. I was like, I'm just going to probably spend time with my family and just kind of hang out. He's like, no. He goes, fuck that. He goes, here's what you're going to goddamn do. He said, you're going to wake up. You're going to goddamn train. Every time he'd talk, he'd like close his eyes because he stuttered kind of weird. Like that weird Tristan stutter
like
thing.
Yeah.
Like he's choking on a dick kind of thing.
Tristan only does it when he gets so excited.
He's like, going to wake up. You're going to goddamn train because it's your goddamn job. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to eat because you got to grow. He's like, you got to get bigger, Smelly. After that, you're going to goddamn tan. He goes, after that, you're going to goddamn eat again. He goes, and it's a goddamn double day. There are no vacations. He goes, you're going to go back to the gym and you're going to goddamn train. He goes, you got to eat again. You got to load those muscles up. And he goes, and to end the day, going to go to the goddamn titty bar, and then you're going to repeat for 14 days straight. That's your goddamn vacation.
That's a promo right there. Just talk about what you did all week.
I got to fucking write that down.
Yeah.
Always be promoing, right?
So the originator of the promo, my favorite, your favorite.
Oh, Muhammad Ali.
The best.
Yeah, he might have been.
I'm knocking out all bums.
That's the greatest quote, and it's so simple.
Well, it's the best. I've done wrestled with alligators. I've been doing something different lately.
But it doesn't make any sense because he was fighting the best in the world, and he calls everybody a bum.
That's why it's the best.
I'm knocking out all bums.
All bums. That's like
I've been chopping down trees.
It's all about confidence, I guess.
Hospitalize the stone.
I done wrestled an alligator.
He's so good.
He's awesome.
He's amazing. Will Smith does a pretty good job on that.
Yeah, that movie was pretty good.
Will Smith just does a good job of like picking up his mannerisms.
But they also showed what a dirty bastard he was. They
too.
They got into that a little too much. They went a little too real on that.
They always do that.
Let's just leave him a hero.
That's like what's the other movie?
Let's
nobody needs to have their dirt.
Ray Charles.
Who cares what his 7 wives think of him?
Yeah,
Fuck
Ray
them.
Charles.
Yeah.
Like you're like Ray Charles is the greatest musician ever, and like that movie's really good. And then all they talk about is him doing heroin or whatever the whole time.
Yeah, like we don't need to know this side of him.
Yeah, why'd you got to beat him down like that?
Well, the heroin was good though.
Yeah, he was freaking out on that thing.
Who's to say it's bad? I've never even tried it.
Well, my wife who's a nurse says that you don't see old cocaine addicts.
Right.
You don't see
Yeah, cocaine's a young person drug.
Yeah, but you definitely see old heroin addicts.
So you're saying for longevity, we should
for
all be
longevity,
honest.
yeah, because it just doesn't do the same kind of damage. If you're using clean needles, you can fucking use heroin forever. It's not a good idea. Don't try this at home.
I was about to say that you only see young cocaine addicts because they all have heart attacks.
That too. Yeah,
Yeah, they're all dead.
I know. The other one I was going to say is methamphetamine. You don't see the old meth addicts. 50s.
What about
That's pretty much where they die.
endo rush addicts? Where do we go?
I don't know.
Where am I supposed
gym.
to
You
go?
can sneak by. There you go.
I've seen at least 10 tweets at the three of us saying, I'm buying NO Explode or Endo Rush just because the PowerCast.
The new NO Explode, by the way, is fucking off the charts.
You said you took it by yourself on the couch, though. You weren't even working out.
Yeah.
You're an addict.
That's dangerous.
You're an addict.
I just wanted to try it. I just wanted to see if it would hit me.
And it was amazing.
And it hit me, and then I went to the gym.
And then what?
And then he went to the bathroom. No. Yes.
No, I didn't.
And then I ate like
I
it's
never
my
had
job.
The shits. Some people say they get their shits from NO Explode. I never had that
I
before.
only had that from the very first version, but I
Maybe
liked it.
It has creatine in it, I guess. I don't know.
I think it's just
I never had a
caffeine.
blowout.
People are like, oh, it gives me the shits. Well, like, drink a cup of coffee and you don't get the shits.
I guess we should say that be looking for a web commercial, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's fair enough to say.
for the new NO Explode featuring some
Smelly?
members of
Flex Lewis?
Team Super Training, including
Featuring my member.
and especially Mark Bell.
Yeah. I actually, NO Explode was the best because it was like a timer. I'd like, all right, I'm going to work out at 2 o'clock. I'll chug my NO Explode at 1 o'clock. Take a shit at 1:30, head to the gym, freak out of my mind, and lift for the next 3 hours straight.
And you stole money from your dad to get the NO Explode.
Borrowed.
No, I don't believe it.
My gains were so important, I had to borrow money.
Did you take out a loan from Dad?
Dad, listen, it's not that big of a deal.
That would be a
It
great-
only costs $60 for a bottle.
That'd be a great skit going to like fucking Bank of America, like, I need a loan.
Yeah.
Oh, what for, son? Well, I'm trying to gain some muscle.
Trying to gain some size.
I just need $100.
So,
Yeah.
I got a story. I got a text out of the blue yesterday from
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue from John Romanello, who wrote Man 2.0.
Is that the guy in Twilight?
He made those Nike squat shoes, right?
No, not that one.
Yeah, who's the guy in
Romello?
Who's the guy in Twilight?
Romanowski?
No, not him either.
Joe Magnanello?
No.
Right?
No,
We were just
although
talking
I would
about-
take a tweet from him any day.
Yeah.
Whoa. Hey
Whoa,
now.
hey.
Can I get a hey now?
It's Man Crush Monday right
That's
here.
weird. I just call my cock a tweet.
Yeah.
I'll take a tweet from anybody.
No, this is the guy who wrote, with John Bornstein, wrote Man 2.0.
Is he the guy? Is he the guy with
Engineering the Alpha.
really bad hair?
Really great, really bad. So it goes
Yeah,
back and
yeah,
forth. Yeah,
yeah.
He's got high
That
cycle
one
time
year was
between,
real bad.
between great hair and
And he's
bad
like,
hair.
they told me to grow out my hair. I'm like, who's they? Why are you listening to them?
They give you bad advice.
You got hair of like an old president. You're gonna look like you're gonna be put on a $1 bill or something like that. Wearing
Anyway,
some sort of old wig or something.
he's got interesting hair. Let's just say. When
Yeah, I
it's
don't know.
long,
I
it's interesting.
I don't know what he looks like.
Okay, well,
Flowing locks.
I'll show you later. Anyway, he texted me from a gym in Long Island where he was back home visiting. He lives in LA now, and he said, young guy named Chris Priori is a huge fan of us.
That name sounds familiar for some reason.
Yeah, it does. He's actually getting ready for a meet. He was using a slingshot. So
Nice.
yeah, so he went up and talked to him because he was using the slingshot.
Cool.
And the most gratifying part for me was that he was like, "You know, Jim," which nobody ever does that.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we're
That's cool.
We're a little bit everywhere.
We are. We're everywhere.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody at the Fit Expo this last weekend.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
Fat Expo in San Jose.
That was cool.
Anyone within a 2-mile radius should try to check that out next year because it's growing every year, and this year was
Bigger
a
and
lot,
badder.
A lot better than last year.
And Herb Dean was there.
Herb Dane, he was in the
Big
hizzy.
old Herb.
Oh, really?
Not only Herb Dane, but also we had Jake Cutler,
Mr.
and,
Phil Heath.
we had Phil Heath,
The gift and the present.
the reigning champion of the
Oh.
Mr. Olympia.
Phil came in yesterday?
Yeah, just for,
Okay.
I think just for a second to
Yeah,
talk. I don't know.
he was somewhere else in the country.
Yeah, I read his tweet,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, he's not coming."
Yeah, that's
And,
what I thought, too.
He popped up and wanted to hang
He
out
had
with
his
us.
clothes there. I saw that.
Yeah.
He had a booth.
He's got a big old crew though. They're
He had a
running it.
booth.
When you said he had his clothes there, I thought maybe like he just shucked them and
He
left
had a
them behind there.
Maybe.
Pair of undies he left behind.
They're eBaying him.
Big
as we
Robb,
speak.
Big Robb, the Canadian Partlow.
Yeah, he's fucking huge. The guy that works for Mutant, right?
Mutant TV on YouTube.
He
They
looks-
run like a little show.
He looks like a mutant
Yeah, he's huge.
for sure.
Well, he's a very, very tall bodybuilder.
He was
Yeah.
a big fan of the Slang Shot. And
Yeah, it was
all
cool.
the
He seemed
Slang Shot
excited.
products and stuff.
Yeah, it was cool. He said he trained with bands and chains. He's like, I know I'm a bodybuilder, but I lift with some bands and chains.
Yeah, well, why don't they? I
Yeah.
mean, it just gives you constant resistance throughout the entire range of motion, especially the bands.
Yeah, well, and if they're benching 400 pounds for sets of 10, why not do 315 and some bands? It's probably easier on your
Yeah.
joints.
I was
Well-
gonna say, yeah, the joint thing is a big deal, especially with chains.
What we're always trying to do is we're trying to like almost like run away from the weight. We're trying to lift it so fast that we get the fuck out of there as quickly as possible.
Well, that's why we hurt too.
But they're trying. I know. Yeah, it fucking hurts. But they're trying to lift a lot slower. And if you try to do that with bands, you barely need any weight on the bar.
Yeah, it's great.
Like if you just put a heavy amount of band tension on the bar and just had like 95 or 135 and moved it slow,
Yeah.
you're gonna burn your freaking chest out big time.
I just burning my chest out. You telling me that?
Big time.
Big time.
So
Can I
what's
get a hey now?
Hey now?
Hey now. Apparently Howard Stern just says that. Been saying it for a long time.
No, somebody else tweeted us that somebody else. It's from a different show that we're wrong.
No, it's not wrong. It's just also.
Two
Also.
wrongs make a
Well,
right.
soon people will be saying it's coming from the PowerCast.
Yeah, exactly.
Two wrongs make very right.
I, in meeting a lot of people at the Fit Expo, it was, a lot of people know us from different shit.
Yeah.
A lot of people were fans of Bigger, Stronger, Faster. A lot of people were fans of the podcast. Some people were just fans of SuperTraining.tv.
One girl was a fan of you from coaching football. Did
There
I tell
you go.
you that, Jim?
There you
Some
go.
girl was like, "Is that Mark Bell who coached at Pioneer?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "He coached my friend." I was like,
I ran into a bunch of kids that were all nervous to take a photo with me, and they were from Pioneer also.
"Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool."
It was weird.
Did they know you from Pioneer, or they knew you separate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, they know me from the other kids or whatever.
Yeah. You're a
Some of the-
legend.
some of the other kids probably still coach there or something like that.
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
so.
As the head coach moved, right?
Yeah, he's in Placerville, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he moved to a
Placer,
bigger program.
Placer High.
Yeah, he's a good coach.
We probably shouldn't throw the floodgates up and like this, but people shouldn't be nervous about asking Mark for pictures when
No,
we're at
I
events
don't
and stuff
care.
because he is always accommodating.
Yeah.
And selfies.
I'd be accommodating if anybody asked me, but
No pictures.
never happens.
Son of a bitch.
Accommodating the resistance.
Yeah, I don't have any resistance to accommodate there.
But yeah, some people also knew me from the Power Project stuff that I do, so I got to get my ass going on that shit again.
Yeah, somebody mentioned.
It's not easy.
Yeah, a lot of videos. Well, we got a lot of work in here. We're grinding everywhere.
Yeah, it's not easy to be everywhere all the time, but I will try more betterest.
Yeah, we need 2 Mark Bells. I'm just kidding. One's too much.
That would be dangerous.
Yeah.
That would be dangerous.
And awkward. Anyway, we have Mr. Robb Wolf on the show today. And we were talking in one of the other podcasts. We've talked about it in the past a little bit about trying to make money in the fitness industry and the different routes people can go and the different ways of doing. I mean, you can
And the
sell.
route everyone goes.
Yeah, you can sell your used underwear after a long squat session on eBay.
Or if your robot socks,
Yeah.
weird.
What was it? $200?
300.
I
$200
think someone offered him, and I told him, I was like, you should probably just do it, dude. Send,
Yeah.
Like, don't send
Yeah.
a return address or something. Just fucking do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Why not?
Yeah.
Send them somebody else's socks.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, go steal some socks. Go buy some new socks
Yeah.
for $5 and make $295.
But so if you're listening out there, that's one way to make money. Sell your used underpants. But it's not easy. It's not easy to try to find something different. Everyone basically has an ebook. A lot of people sell T-shirts.
Work for a supplement company on every other weekend.
Yeah, a lot of guys, and you see the shuffling of supplement companies when you go to these shows. You go to the Olympia, you go to the Arnold, and you see somebody with BSN one year, and then they're with a different company the next year, and a different company the next year. And it's just it's not easy to figure out a good path, and it's not easy to you're trying to hold down your integrity and your values that you have for yourself, but at the same goddamn time, you got to try to figure out ways of making some money.
Right.
Well, a lot of we always talk about, like, we like coaching people, but we don't like being personal trainers.
Right.
And that's what everybody,
That's
I
a
think, is trying to
distinction
avoid.
that people don't necessarily always get either. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you're standing there counting sets and reps, you're a personal trainer.
Yeah,
Right.
when if you're doing it 9 to 5, and
Right.
I try to avoid all of it just because I don't like being lumped in with anybody.
yeah,
I think the things that I do are different, so different from everybody else that I shouldn't be lumped in with anybody else. I've invented products and stuff like that, and so I try to be different, but it's hard because you can only be so different.
you're in a small circle. And we're just talking the fitness industry.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
All right, we can go back to making money, but let's first shout out Mr. Kevin Oak.
Oh, yeah.
Smashing 2,000 this
Oh,
weekend.
yeah.
500
I
bench.
saw that.
505 bench. He nearly died on a squat.
I didn't see any of it. I was just
Yeah, he tried
scrolled
to
across
squat
the bench.
something heavy-ish. I can't remember what it was.
I think he hit
740,
and then his second and third attempt he had some
was on
troubles with.
He's on an Iron Wolf bar.
Iron Wolf.
He's not used to it. It was rolling.
Iron Wolf boy.
It's
the
so
Iron
thick.
Wolf bar is super thick, and it doesn't. It's thicker than all the other bars out there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't
And it
bend
doesn't
the same way.
bend at all.
You would think Big Black Oak was used to a thick bar, but
Not
you
s-
figure
it
Yeah,
caused him
not.
some issues.
his hands were used to that kind of thing.
That's all right.
Hey now.
We still got love for him.
But yeah, he did awesome, and I saw his last deadlift attempt. I don't know if you guys saw it. He put it up on Facebook.
Yeah, he got a little forward at the end and then grinded it out.
But I saw the same thing at Raw Unity, where the guy has the ability of just like talking himself into making a lift. It's really kind of cool. I mean, you see people get hyped up and the weights start to get heavy, and you're like, I know the guy's excited, but God damn it, he's gonna fucking miss it.
Yeah, the greatest
Yeah.
is when someone's like screaming at the bar.
Yeah.
And they turn the magnets on. They don't even
Yeah,
get off the ground.
The guy's gonna get himself all hyped up, and then his grip's gonna go at the very top, or he's not gonna be able to lock it out, or he's gonna get called for hitching, or he got himself too excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the second time I've seen Kevin Oak talk himself into making a lift, and congrats to him. That was fucking awesome.
That's a big
I
total.
know he missed his third attempt, but who gives a fuck?
It's his first-
his first 2,000
Yeah.
pound total, and he
At
only weighs
2
220.
Yeah, and he's kind of legit 220. I think he walks around at 226 or something.
Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's pretty good. He's jacked.
Extra 6 pounds for his cock.
Yeah,
But-
do you guys mind if I just lay it on the table when I weigh in?
We got your back, Kevin Oak. We know what's going on. We've seen that.
They're trying to cheat
We've
you.
seen that singlet.
We've seen that singlet stretch to its maximum potential.
Yeah, I forgot to write the note, but he wanted a new singlet, and him and Cummings wanted one.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out who needs the bigger singlet.
Yeah, we had a 2X and like a XL. Mark's like, it's not even a joke anymore. Like, let's just give Kevin Oak the 2X. He needs the
Yeah.
extra space.
There you go.
Poor guy.
So back to money. I think that
Money.
Robb is a research chemist, though, right? I mean,
He's a smarty pants.
Yeah, and how he ended up in all of this was a real personal story, I think. And the
Right.
book, my understanding, the Paleo Solution book, actually grew out of sort of the need to communicate to people before they went to his seminars.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
It's basically a prep for the seminar, but
I'm never going to a seminar because I'm never reading a book.
He did a lot of seminars for a long time. I don't know if we can ask him.
Yeah, I don't know if he still does or not.
Much anymore.
He's got a little family, yeah? He's got some kiddies.
Yeah, I think
he's
so.
about
And
to
I think
have another one.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think that was my understanding.
his book has reached so many people now to maybe where there's not a point in him.
His book has
sitting
reached
down 30 people or 50 people.
His book has reached so many people they think he invented paleo.
Right.
That's
right.
a huge
Yeah.
step. Like imagine if you did so much, people thought Mark Bell invented powerlifting.
Right.
Like
yeah.
you've done a lot, but no one can do that.
Right,
Like that's
right.
pretty powerful.
Yeah, they think that he kind of invented the term or whatever, but
What does that even mean? Hopefully we'll find out.
yeah, no, we'll ask him all that shit.
Yeah, we're gonna
try to get some
actually-
definitions from him.
We will take the approach that our audience is not that well versed in what paleo actually is, instead of just like a word that sets people off.
Yeah,
one
Rob,
way or the other.
Rob doesn't know what's about to hit him, but we'll have Mark play
But-
the devil's advocate a
But
little bit.
the thing to keep in mind here is that the guys had a positive influence
Right.
on all aspects of fitness and strength. I know some people get all pissed off when they hear the word paleo, and they
Same
think,
way they get pissed off when they hear the word CrossFit.
yeah, and they think that you're not allowed to eat any carbohydrates. But we'll talk to Robb Wolf about that. We'll get to the bottom of it.
Well, it's the same as everything, right? Like people get pissed off at the if it fits your macros, flexible dieting, and they blame Lane Norton. Lane Norton didn't spit all that. It's the crazy kids that learn a little bit of information and take it too long.
Right.
Yeah.
Take it too
Right.
far. That's the same thing with probably
Well,
Rob,
and
you know.
And they
People,
take it to Burger King.
Yeah, they go
Yeah. They take
extreme.
it to the pastry
And they
aisle,
post
you know?
a picture of a Pop-Tart every day, but really 99% of their
Right.
diet is not a Pop-Tart.
Well, and same thing with paleo, right? They post like 12 pieces of bacon and 3 avocados on it. Like, paleo, bro, like this has to be the healthiest thing on the planet.
Right, and they're not posting the fact that they're eating chicken breasts and other things in
and they're
between.
eating
And
dark chocolate covered nuts. And stuff
Right.
Like that's paleo. It's all right.
We're back to Kevin Oak.
Yeah, big nuts, big
Hey.
dark chocolate.
hey now,
Dark-
and I
dark
think,
chocolate oak.
Something important to talk to Wolf about will be, about the gluten-free diet and the gluten-free lifestyle. I think a lot of people just automatically think, oh, that diet sounds great for me. I'm gonna burn tons of fat, and it's not necessarily going to do that. It's if you're in too much of a calorie surplus, if you're eating if you're eating way over your daily allowance for food,
you're screwed either way.
then you're going to be fucked.
There's nothing that'll help you except for cardio.
And I think especially the case with females. Females are a lot smaller in a lot of cases than the guys that are trying some of these diets. And we it's going to be good to ask him some questions and try to figure out, exactly what is the point of his diet. Is it, because most diets are to change your body composition.
Right.
Yeah.
Or to at least change your health in some way. So I wonder if it's more of a health-based diet, or is it more of a body composition diet, or is it more of a performance-based?
Diet's
and it can't be all three.
Diet's an interesting.
There's no such thing,
it can't
really.
be all three. You can't serve all three of those masters at the same
I think
time.
maybe
any two.
Maybe a bodybuilding diet covers all three, and that's about it.
Well, we always talk about diet, and we're always talking about looks and slightly performance.
Right.
Always. Whenever any podcast we've ever had or any conversation in quiet, we're never talking about what's going to make me live to 120.
Right.
It'd be kind of interesting to find out, also too with how popular the diet has become in the CrossFit community, and is it popular in other endurance sports? Like, is it popular with cycling or anything like that? And are these guys running off of fat? Are they running off carbohydrates? I mean, what are these people?
Yeah. Why did it become a performance thing if he didn't intend it to?
Right.
I don't know.
That's probably a good point to take a little break, and we'll be back
and call him in.
Robb Wolf.
Hey now.
After all our sponsors.
There we go.
Yeah, look at that hair. It looks like you got a wig on.
Oh, dude, it's all I got left. Cy Sperling let me down, so
that's amazing. Hey, so to just to kick this podcast off the right way here, before people turn it off too early and hear us talk about paleo and CrossFit, let's get a little bit of your iron credibility going here, and let's talk about your old powerlifting days. Let's talk about some of the numbers. What's your best squat, bench, deadlift in competition?
In competition, my best bench squat deadlift, 565 squat and deadlift, and then a very piddly 345 bench. That was in the 181 class. Teenage division when I was 19.
Damn. And how many anabolic steroids were you on at that time?
Well, I was pubescent, so I was on all of them at the time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
it's not the best time to train. You get gains no matter what you do.
Yeah, I had a high school football injury, a neck injury, and in ninth grade. And then I was actually introduced to Danny Thurman. I don't know if you know Danny.
Name
and then Rich Woods. And Danny's uncle Dave actually set me up on a neck strengthening protocol, and then he taught me how to back squat. And the first time I back squatted, it was with an empty bar, and I fell on my ass, and Dave had to catch the bar and pull me out of there. It was total Bambi legs kind of gig. And then those guys just managed to save me from myself, and worked my way up to some pretty decent numbers powerlifting. I'm about 5'9", and there was a time in high school when I could stand under a basketball hoop and flat foot dunk a tennis ball. Yeah.
There you go. So give us some definitions here. We'll run down a list, and you can take your time with them if you want. But what's the word paleo mean?
Oh man, for me, paleo is more than just a food approach. It's an overall template for looking at sleep, food, exercise, ideally the way that medicine is practiced. And it's definitely, I don't want it as like a religious, jihadist event, but I think it's a really efficient way to ask some questions and to just create a starting point when we look at the way that our biology functions, the way our genetics have been formed over time, and kind of ask some questions about what are some operating parameters that are good for human beings and really all any organism on the planet. What did it evolve to exist in? And then if we see some disease processes, we see some problems in that organism, why is that? And is it maybe a discordance with the way that it's eating, sleeping, moving, these sorts of things? And then we can have some kind of informed decisions versus just it's Mediterranean diet, it's China study, it's this, it's that. To me, it's pulling back and using evolutionary medicine, this evolutionary biology perspective as the starting point, by no means the finishing point, but as a starting point of having a conversation about what maybe is kind of optimum for human health, and then kind of working out from there.
That seems to make a lot of sense. So basically just, what were we designed to do, and then just kind of going from there and seeing what we're actually able to do.
Yeah, and clearly when we start talking about the outer layers of human performance, it's going to be very, very different than what we started with, as like a skinny hunter-gatherer dashing across the savannah or something like that. But it's some things you can still take back from that. If somebody's wanting to gain a lot of muscle mass and just have a high level of athletic performance, reducing inflammation in their body is going to be a good thing. And some of the more new foods that we tend to consume cause a lot of inflammation in the gut, cause systemic inflammation, and that means that you're allocating some of your adaptive response towards dealing with that inflammation versus having it ready to deal with the stresses of training. So, that's where you can still use this template and make some informed decisions that could maybe improve athletic performance.
What are some of the main issues of inflammation? I mean, you just touched upon it a little bit, but why is it important to address?
And inflammation where? I think that's another...
Yeah, where are we talking about?
Potentially systemic inflammation, like throughout all of the body, but also gut inflammation being more specific. But if you think about the body's immune system as kind of like a civil defense network, you've only got a certain amount of resources that you can allocate towards a problem. So like, if there's like a hurricane that comes in, you've only got a certain number of people that can go and respond to that. But do you want that dealing with a really bad diet? Do you want it dealing with sleep deprivation? Do you want it dealing with a stressful job? Or do you want most of that stuff as pinned down and dealt with as you can, and it's all available for dealing with recovery from exercise, from training, and that sort of thing? So in really simple terms, this inflammatory process is a critical part of training. It's a critical part of learning and memory development. We actually get an inflammatory response from that. But then how much of that can be dealt with our body's adaptive systems, or are we overwhelming the system because we have all these external stressors? Like in police, military, and fire situations, we see these guys just crushed from both bad diet and also from the shift work that they do. And so trying to figure out strategies for dealing with that.
What are some of the positive things you've seen in recommending the paleo solution to people in terms of inflammation? Would it kind of help with tendonitis or arthritis or even your own experience? I know you had a lot of health issues when you were younger, so if you can maybe touch upon some of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the interesting things is you'll have somebody come into the gym and they have like plantar fasciitis, shoulder tendonitis, and this was classically like our endurance athletes, multi-sport athletes, like they just had itises and everywhere. And it just seemed to kind of cool the heat on these people. And oftentimes there were then some entrained neurological deficiencies, because once they became injured and chronically inflamed, the body was kind of compensating for that. And so usually we would then, once we cleaned up the diet, got their sleep improved, we would pump them to an ART practitioner, get some of that scar tissue broken up, and then get some movement rehab so that neurologically they were kind of wired up better and not re-exacerbating that injury. But whenever you do any type of physical activity, there's just certain amount of like shear force and wear and tear that's going on. And if you are too inflamed for your body to deal with that, then it accumulates and you get scar tissue, and that's where we get these chronic itises. Whereas if we can bring that level of inflammation down, then we may not develop that, or it buys us even more run in our training before we develop these problems.
It's interesting in talking to a lot of leading experts, in talking with Kelly Starrett. I was recently with Kelly Starrett. We did a talk with WWE, and you get a lot of guys coming up and saying, "Hey, my neck hurts, or my elbow hurts, or my shoulder hurts," and it's you can start to work. Someone like Kelly obviously is qualified enough to just start working directly on that area. But what he brings up is sleep, diet, and hydration.
Right.
And the athlete's like, "Fuck you, man. My shoulder fucking hurts," is what I just said. But
right.
Kelly's like, "I hear what you're saying, but we have to clean up all these other areas." It sounds like you have a very similar approach.
Yeah, that it's interesting. Kelly, I think, arrived at this stuff, from a physical therapy perspective, but you get in and you start doing this really high-level manual therapy on folks, and some people respond well and some people don't, and you start asking this question, well, why do the people who aren't responding well, what's going on with them? And they're short-slept, they have for them, a pro-inflammatory diet, and some other issues. And then you get these folks to start cleaning that up. And then, particularly with someone like Kelly, he's feeling the quality of the tissue day to day.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, man, why don't you try cutting out gluten? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And then he can feel the quality of the tissue change. And the person reports, hey, I'm feeling way better, And so both the practitioner and the patient are giving that same report. And it's, sleep, food, which under food, I would throw the hydration, thing in there. And then proper movement and all of that stuff just has kind of an additive beneficial wave when people get that all together. But it's the stuff that, people, particularly high-level athletes, interestingly, I think because they're usually pretty genetically gifted as a start, they can get away with burning the candle at both ends. We see this a ton in the special operations community, like the, people who go through BUDS training and SEALs selection. They are just genetically wired up in a way to handle a workload that would literally kill everybody else. But these guys still break down at some point, and still addressing to the best that we can sleep, food, exercise ends up benefiting these guys.
Yeah, someone like Brett Farr comes to mind, who had alcohol addiction, addicted to painkillers and stuff like that throughout his career. And I'm sure he was probably a guy who was like, fuck diet, I'm just going to kind of do my own thing.
Right.
And he survived longer than anybody. You bring up a good point about athletes. Sometimes you sometimes have to realize, like, hey, this dude's on a different level. And that we see that with training. Yeah. We see that in all aspects where you're like, hey, man, how the hell's that guy increased his squat by 200 pounds? And it's just sometimes you have to simply point out the fact, like, that guy's just a freak.
Right. And trying to take too much away from what they're doing, if you're a little more on the shallow end of the gene pool,
right,
it's probably going to kill you. So yeah, which I would definitely
shallow end of the gene pool. Yeah. I like that.
I think we're going to change the podcast to that name.
Shallow end of the gene pool.
What was poverty carbohydrates? What was
poverty macros?
Yeah, poverty macros is something that was brought up by Lane Norton. You're probably familiar with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is gluten?
Oh man, gluten's a protein that's found in a variety of kind of wheat-related grains: wheat, rye, oats, barley, millet. They either have specifically gluten or gluten-like proteins in them. It's part of the kind of anti-predation strategy that these things use. Again, using this evolutionary biology framework, everything in biology has horns and thorns and teeth and poison, and it's either eating something or trying to eat something. And the gluten is some of the protein fraction of these grains that prevents critters from eating it. It causes a GI disruption and everything from insects all the way up to humans. And not everybody reacts to it. Not everybody reacts to it the same way, but a lot of people do. And this is one of those things that I think that, like my book and also this whole paleo concept versus, say, just like Atkins, we definitely talk about like carbohydrate restriction for people who are metabolically broken. But we went a couple of layers deeper and started looking at the potential that some of these kind of anti-predation chemicals that you find in plants could be really problematic for some people. And then we threw out this super greasy used car salesman pitch of try this shit for 30 days and see what happens, and then reintroduce it and see what happens with that. And if you see some benefit, then leave it out of the diet. If if there's no change one way or the other, then, no harm, no foul. Just keep doing what you've been doing. But we found that a lot of people really benefit. It, like, out of all this kind of paleo nuttery, I would say that the gluten-free deal, if people were to do one thing, like go gluten-free, try to sleep as much as a teenager, like those two things alone, which it's kind of funny, selling sleep should be as easy as selling sex, but it's hard as hell to get people signed up about it. But those two things alone, I think, would just have the greatest return on investment for anybody that you could ever find.
And you're not talking about people who actually have disease related to gluten. You're talking about people who just have a sensitivity just in their bodies, and their bodies are reacting to whatever chemical process is going on with the...
So it's not even necessarily celiac disease. And there's been some back and forth on this. Like there's been this concept of non-celiac gluten sensitivity that maybe was related to gluten, but now it looks like maybe it's not gluten. It may be these things called FODMAPs, and it goes really far down the rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, It's just doing this elimination diet and seeing how people respond to it. And that seems to be the thing that works.
I know that in terms of like environmental factors and food, sometimes people react to things minimally, not to the point where a test is going to say that they actually have an allergy to it, but they're sensitive enough that they have symptoms. And that's true for hay fever type allergies. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't it be true for food allergies and particularly gluten?
Right. And that's an interesting point too. Is that a lot of folks have noticed that they'd say they would have seasonal allergies that were pretty bad. They go on kind of a anti-inflammatory paleo type diet, and then they notice that the seasonal allergies are improved, which is really similar to noticing that the inflammation, like the itises that they had, improve. It's part of this overall systemic load of inflammation, immune response. And if you dial down some elements of that immune response, you tend to dial down all of the elements of it.
It seems to me that, when someone comes out with a book or somebody makes a video and they're trying to address an issue, people kind of only hear what they want to hear, or they only hear part of the story. When you're saying you introduced this 30-day challenge, I have not even really heard people ever talk about reintroducing some of these things. And it seems like that's a piece of the puzzle that maybe some people have missed, is to go back and try to find out for yourself how you're responding to these foods. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, the recommendation for the 30-day challenge is a little bit, it is literally a little bit of a greasy used car salesman pitch, in that the response is pretty consistently poor. But really what that is the person who's super arms crossed, they're not buying into this thing at all. That's kind of my pitch. I'm like, listen, man, you could do anything for 30 days. So give it a shot. It's more of a sales pitchy kind of thing on the front end. And then people feel a lot better, but it's more of a psychological thing of, just give it a shot. This isn't a forever type of thing. But then what I find is people kind of find some kind of 80-20 buy-in that they more or less stick with. And I find that the reintroduction doesn't happen all that much if people feel a lot better. They're like, okay, I feel so much better, I don't even need to mess around with this. Or it's very occasional. So I would say that the 30-day challenge is almost more of a psychology tool than it is some sort of a practical clinical tool.
Well, it makes people more mindful of their diets, period, which is going to have a positive effect most of the time.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
It also seems like just the fact of pulling out gluten, you're just getting rid of things like peanut butter cups, which are my favorite. But it just seems like you're basically just pulling out a lot of junk, and that's a lot of times why I recommend it to people too, is like, hey man, just pull out all the bullshit that you're eating for a little while,
right.
And it seems like that's a little bit of your message.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's where I think when people really, some of the folks that are critical of this whole paleo concept, they're like, well, you're just removing junk food. And I'm like, and your point is what? It's like this person had an autoimmune disease. Now they don't. We maybe don't understand all the mechanisms. But
you're ripping people off, telling them not to eat junk.
People respond. So I have some really good friends that are like Harvard researchers. They're like top of the food chain researchers, and these guys get really hung up on just having exactly the correct scientific message, which is really important in an academic scene. But when you're dealing with the public, you need these heuristics, these really simple stories that carry people to a beneficial endpoint. And so sometimes that story may not be, it may be 80% right, not 100% right, but it ends up getting them to the right spot. And so that's the difference between research and coaching and actually affecting some change. And what I've found is that when people move in this direction, they're eating more protein, they make the bulk of their carbs from like lower glycemic load carbs, sticking higher glycemic load carbs in the post-workout period, avoiding gluten, looking at a few other foods that they may be reactive to, they end up cutting out the bulk of the junk food. They're eating more protein, which is good. They control their blood sugar levels, which is good. And it was a heuristic or a story that was simple enough for them to wrap their head around and be able to do it for a period where they actually affected what looks like a lifetime change.
Right.
And I can't see the downside of that. Now, again, there are elements of this that from an academic perspective may not be 100% solid, or we may not know all the story yet, but still the outcomes are really, really good. So, yeah.
The diet you've explained so far sounds like it's more analytical and diagnostic. How did that kind of turn into a CrossFit or performance lifestyle for a lot of people?
Oh, man. Well, I was involved with CrossFit right at the very beginning. I actually sent the first affiliate inquiry email ever when I was working with Dave Warner up in Seattle. We found CrossFit online like late 2000, early 2001. He had a garage there where we had some Olympic, some bumpers and some Olympic bars. And we actually had some gymnastics rings hung up in the thing that we were messing around before we saw CrossFit. And we started doing this stuff and really liked what we saw, liked the results. Dave was a retired SEAL who had retired out with a 70% disability due to a low back injury that had given him drop foot. He had peroneal nerve damage from that. And he was able to really remarkably rehab himself doing a bunch of this stuff in kind of a modified format. So we were really sold on this.
Are you talking about Dave Castro?
Dave Warner.
Oh, Dave Warner. Okay.
Dave Warner. And, we contacted the Glassmans, asked them, we said, we're going to open a gym. Can we call it CrossFit? And they were like, yeah, go for it. And that was CrossFit North, which was the first CrossFit affiliate in the world. And then I moved down to Chico, California, where I did my undergrad. Seattle is lacking this fiery orb in the sky called the sun, and that became kind of a problem for me after a couple of years. And so I opened a gym down there called CrossFit NorCal, which was the fourth CrossFit gym in the world. And then I worked for CrossFit HQ for a number of years, and I was kind of the main nutrition guy for a long time until I had a split with those guys. But it was just trying to get people to look at who they were. If they were an overweight, metabolically broken person, looking at more of a low carb kind of approach to this. If they were a top of the food chain athlete, then looking at ways that we could tweak this that were beneficial for athletics and recovery. And that's kind of where the whole thing started.
What kind of carbohydrates do you suggest for, we here at Super Training, we're pretty lucky to deal with some high level athletes and some CrossFitters in particular that will work out 2 or 3 times a day. What kind of carbohydrates are these guys, should they be eating?
For the really high level person, it probably starts looking very similar to anything that you would see in most gyms, like post workout, some whey protein and like a waxy maize starch or a maltodextrin deal, like a 4-to-1 carb to protein ratio with that, white rice, white potatoes. Again, largely staying gluten-free, but with these folks, they're burning so many calories and it's so glycolytically demanding. Like the way that CrossFit is set up, it doesn't go long enough to just rely on a fat-fueled athlete. They don't do enough short-end stuff so that you could, again, do something like a Mauro Di Pasquale, like a cyclic ketogenic diet or something like that. It's very, very glycogen demanding. So they've just got to eat a lot of carbs and really take advantage of that post-workout window to get a lot of those nutrients in.
That's really interesting that you say that. That's a lot of times what I suggest to people is a straight up bodybuilding style diet.
Yeah.
When you're talking about high level performance and a ton of performance demand, I usually just suggest 30 to 50 carbs depending on your size, similar amount of protein, and keeping the fats in moderation.
Yeah, I mean for CrossFit athletes, the fats end up just being incidental usually, because they need so many carbohydrates to recover. If they're having a problem getting calories in, then that's where we'll throw butter and coconut oil and all that stuff onto their sweet potatoes and then their rice and everything just to bump up the caloric load. But, oddly enough, it ends up looking a ton like just a classic bodybuilder diet, like moderate to high protein, quite high carbohydrate, and then the fat is just kind of incidental. I don't have people start like trimming their fat off of their meat and stuff like that, but they're not, versus somebody who say is kind of metabolically broken and they're not that good at handling carbohydrates. They may be a moderate to low carbohydrate load and a higher fat load that maybe not ketogenic, but kind of heading that direction. And they seem to do really well until we get that metabolic engine kind of reshuffled, get their work capacity up, and then they usually start shifting towards a higher carb intake.
Do you sometimes adjust these diets accordingly to how someone's performing and how they're doing? So if someone, let's just say someone drops 20 pounds of body fat, you start to kind of say, all right, well, you don't have to suffer anymore. We can start to throw in some more carbohydrates into your diet. Yeah.
And depending on the person too, like I I've worked with, we do a lot of work with like people who have suffered traumatic brain injury, people who are on dialysis trying to prevent kidney degradation and whatnot. And so we see a really amazing benefit in certain situations for a legitimate ketogenic diet, like really, really low carb. But some of the success that I had with that, I would say early in my coaching career, really skewed me towards a too low of a carbohydrate intake for people who were pushing the athletic envelope. And most of the people I worked with early on were Olympic lifters, power lifters, people doing gymnastics, and their glycolytic demands really weren't that high. Then when I started working with this CrossFit scene, I tried to get like a cyclic low carb way to work with these folks, and there was just no way to match stuff up. Like the nature of the demands were so vigorous, and it was so glycogen demanding that we really just had to revert back to the more of a classic, again, kind of bodybuilder approach. But again, depending on where the person is at, even with somebody who's more overweight, I've started doing more carbs more frequently with these folks and actually moderating the fat intake, because we're looking at some of these other elements like gut health and actually reestablishing a healthy gut biome. And going too low carb can actually prune all their gut bacteria back too severely, and that can be problematic further down the road. So it's 5-7 years ago, I was just like, here's the formula, it works for everybody. And then today it's just a crapshoot. Like, as I've learned more, I feel like it becomes super individualized. You have to really kind of check the pulse of the person day to day, week to week, to figure out where they need to go.
I think you may have mentioned it before, but kind of what you're saying here is basically if you pull back the carbohydrates too much and you try to get rid of all the junk in your diet, that at some point, life happens and you do have to eat junk here and there. There are some weird circumstances. People go overseas and fight wars and all kinds of shit.
Right.
And they have to eat all kinds of different things. So in those cases, those people would almost need to prepare themselves to eat some of those odd foods so their stomach doesn't blow up on them, right? That kind of thing?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So I got a number of these emails where these guys were like deployed SEALs or Rangers or something. They're like, hey, man, I've had a perfectly weighed, measured zone, because they're CrossFitters too, like a zone paleo diet.
Right.
I work out 3 on 1 off, got deployed, ate an MRE, and had the trots for like 5 days. I was like, oh, man. So with those folks,
Rough
we
times.
started recommending that, yeah. I mean, imagine being dug into a hillside, waiting 3 days to take your shot, and then like you eat the one meal that you're going to eat that day, and you have the shits like so bad that it's going to kill you. So I started telling these folks that maybe about a month, 6 weeks before pre-deployment, that they stick a cookie or a beer or something like that in, and then they deal with all those unsavory ramifications at home, and then they're literally kind of immunizing their gut towards dealing with that. But again, they're reintroducing kind of a systemic inflammatory issue in that situation. But it's better to get it to a low grade kind of a stable state versus waiting when they're deployed and they have way fewer resources to deal with it.
How do you feel about fruit across the board? We're talking about different groups of people. We're talking about high-level athletes. We're talking about people with metabolic issues. Like, I know that there are some people who have a difficult time processing fructose. And so what's your take on fruit as a carb source?
Well, it's interesting as people really climb that performance ladder, particularly in kind of a CrossFit scene or like MMA, I find fruit to be high enough in fiber and low enough in caloric density that it kind of bogs down their digestion, and they actually need to go more like rice and white potatoes and sweet potatoes, and definitely take advantage of like the post-workout period. So it's kind of funny, like as people get to a higher and higher level of athletic performance, the diet becomes a little bit kind of low fiber and low, you're looking at kind of lower nutrient density stuff in some ways. Clearly fruits, healthful. I actually steer people more towards like bananas and papaya and these starchier or more calorically dense fruits if they're legit high level athletes, versus going like berries and stuff which I would think would be a great option for the more sedentary like office worker who's playing with doing some body fat changes. We're just trying to keep their glycemic load down. But it's kind of interesting as an athlete really ramps up, like they've only got so much digestive capacity And if we're really bogging it down with a lot of fiber and slow to digest foods, then they're going to have problems. They're just literally not going to be able to get enough throughput to be able to recover.
Okay, it seems like fiber is fairly overrated. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, with the caveat that there's this stuff, resistant starch, which seems to be really, really good for gut bacteria. And that's where like cold, parboiled rice, white potatoes, green or greenish bananas, and there's a number of other things, but those are like some really easy to acquire things, seem to give a decent dose of resistant starch in conjunction with some easily metabolized carbohydrates, and those are really good options for both addressing that post-workout recovery piece, but also feeding the gut bacteria in a really good way.
You gave a recommendation to a friend of mine about adding potato starch to water.
Yeah.
And adding that resistant starch element that
way. And that was such a counterintuitive thing for me, but it has the resistant starch. Because they call it resistant because our normal digestive process, the release of amylase both in our saliva and at the pancreatic level, this starch is resistant to that, and so this stuff makes it all the way into the large intestine, and it feeds the bacteria there. Okay. And under ideal circumstances, we actually feed the bacteria further south in the digestive process, whereas a lot of people, because they eat these highly refined carbohydrates, we're feeding bacteria in the stomach and in the small intestine. We get this process called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and that ends up being really, really bad. It changes the pH of the gut. It causes IBS, Crohn's, a bunch of other digestive issues. And so this resistant starch is really good for feeding the bacteria at the right place in the gut. And it has this really interesting effect that it ends up blunting the insulin response and the glycemic response to subsequent high carbohydrate meals. Okay. So this was something that I would have never, ever predicted, that, just taking this refined potato starch would actually make it. One, it doesn't really produce much of any type of a blood sugar response for the person, as the initial go. But then let's say that you have a big gluten-free pancake meal or something like that. After that, you tend to have less of an insulin load, less of a glycemic load from that meal due to the effects that the resistant starch has on the gut. And I have absolutely no idea what the mechanism is on that, but just observationally, we see that. Even people with type 1 diabetes, who are functioning with only doing exogenous insulin, they end up getting much better blood sugar regulation from doing this resistant starch. It's pretty interesting stuff. And you can grab a bag of Bob's Red Mill potato starch from like any store, like a Rayleigh's, a Whole Foods, anything like that will have this stuff now, and it's like $4 a bag.
That's a cheap way for people to sort of give it a try. We're talking about 30 days of removing, this or that. Or what about 30 days or something like that, and seeing how they feel, just how their gut feels after?
Absolutely, and with the caveat that I would definitely titrate up slowly on it, especially if you have any type of kind of gut weirdness currently. Apparently, some people people will titrate up to getting about 3 to 4 tablespoons a day at the end point on this. But if you dump that in and say, like, you've got a little small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or you have some other gut issues, apparently the gas that you can get from this is so bad that people have been hospitalized thinking that they have like appendicitis.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. That's some really good information right there.
Then there's just like one giant fart that sounds like a 50-gallon whoopee cushion with like a 45-pound plate on it, and this thing just deflates for like 5 minutes.
It's the kind of information we're looking for.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What do you think of all this paleo stuff that has come up in terms of 10,000 fucking paleo bakeries around the world making paleo cookies and all these different things? I mean, I guess it's a decent way to sneak a snack in here and there and to hit your taste buds with something. But I mean, in all honesty, if you're gonna go quote unquote go off your diet, shouldn't you just go off your diet and have some ice cream and enjoy yourself?
Well, again, like for somebody like me that has like serious gluten intolerance, like it really limits the number of things that I can do off rails. Actually, ice cream is one of the things that I could do, but birthday cakes, cookies, stuff like that. There was a long, dark period of my life where I just didn't have anything like that. So I really dig the fact that these things are around. I think that it makes it a little bit of awareness for folks that there's some different options out there, and it gets this kind of paleo term out there. The real paleo purists freak out about it, and they want some sort of like policing of this stuff, which just kind of scares me and freaks me out.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, there are going to be dumb people who don't know better. And I'm like, yeah, there's fucking dumb people who don't know better about everything, whether it's politics or microwaving your water to heat up, and they think that it's going to kill them and stuff like that. Like you can't protect people from that. So overall, I think it's a really good thing. It provides some options for people who are legitimately gluten intolerant or suffer from other intolerancies. People are getting pretty damn good at making this stuff too. So it actually tastes really good.
Right.
So that's cool. And, I think whenever people are entrepreneurial and they get something that's successful, then God love them, man. That's great. So, yeah.
Some people also try the paleo solution with the thought that it's going to have some sort of amazing, fat burning properties. And usually a lot of people run it as if, and it's probably not the way you intended it, but a lot of people run the paleo diet as a keto style diet. And to lose a couple pounds, and then they kind of plateau. What are some of your thoughts on people that are just basically kind of blindly looking into the paleo solution to kind of help them drop body fat?
Well, again, like if you had asked me like 7 years ago, I was definitely in this camp of not super sold on like the calories in, calories out deal, more sold on like an insulin hypothesis story. And so a lot of that was personal experience. Like I had always been kind of a doughy kid, and I could never get lean. And then the first time that I went ketogenic and then doing a cyclic ketogenic diet, I was like 6% body fat, super lean, put on muscle really easy. I had just, as a kid also, it felt like the world was like good. I was getting it through like a head stuffed with cotton. Like I would go in and out of like these hypoglycemic modes. And that was literally like my whole life up until I was like 26, 27 when I found this stuff. Yeah, it explains a lot. But so it was so profound for me. And this is where you get, operator bias on this. I was like, fuck, it works so well for me. It's going to work for everybody else. And then I started recommending it to people, and it seemed to work great. But what was interesting to me was I was eating like 5,500 calories a day and getting leaner on that. But I was lifting weights once or twice a day. I was doing some capoeira. I was doing some kickboxing. So my work output was huge. And I was like 28 to 30. I was like right in the prime of my life. Androgens were still good. You know what I mean? All this stuff was fantastic. But it really skewed me towards this like a more insulin kind of hypothesis of fat gain and all that. And I think that there's still a lot of that out there. And I do think that a low-carb approach for a variety of conditions, like a legit ketogenic approach, is incredibly beneficial for a number of conditions. Again, traumatic brain injury, kidney problems, there's some reproductive issues that resolve from a ketogenic approach. But when we're talking specifically about fat loss, like the unfortunate reality is it really does just burn down to calories. Now, food quality does play a factor in that, but it has more to do with, to me, the palatability of food. And, if you're eating food that tastes good but not like hookers and cocaine good, then it's a lot easier to eat up to satiety and then stop. Whereas when we eat these hyper-palatable foods that, a food scientist has figured out how to make it crunchy and salty and sweet and all of this stuff just in the perfect ratios to make you want to eat a whole bag of it and then like 3 bags of it, then we're talking about a completely different story. And so when folks tackle this stuff from a weight loss perspective, they definitely have to keep some caloric intake in mind. And that's where, people will say, well, I'm not losing any weight on this. And I'm like, okay, give me a list of the foods you're eating, and I'll see almonds on their list. And I'm like, how many almonds are you eating? And they're like, well, a Costco container of almonds, and they eat that at lunch, and there's 3,500 calories right there, and they're having 3 other meals. So at the end of the day, the calories do add up, but the food quality issues are a big factor. I think just from a neuroregulation of appetite. If you're eating lean protein, and again, we're talking more a weight loss deal, lean protein, lots of fruits and vegetables for a satiety signal, some fiber, some fullness. That ends up working really, really well, which again, I mean, that's not that shocking. A thermic effect from protein, it's very satiating. low caloric and glycemic load from the fruits and vegetables you eat, that where would that not work? Yeah.
Seems to be such a shock to people sometimes to embrace this style of dieting. If they're coming from a carb background, or they're coming from eating pasta and eating a lot of junk. And so usually something I suggest is, week 1, week 2, fuck it, man. Just don't worry about the calories. Just follow the plan the best you can. And then after that, there's some tweaking that goes on. But in terms of calories, do you have any basic recommendation, 12 times body weight, or anything you throw out there, male versus female?
I got that stuff from John Wellborn. Like if people are trying to lean out, and this is for reasonably active people, like 10 to 12 calories per pound of body weight seems to be a decent spot for leaning out. 15 to 16 calories per pound is a decent maintenance spot. And then I think like the 19 to 20 calories per pound is a pretty good mass gain spot. And what's interesting with that is that if you can do those simple calculations, or you can go through that whole like Myers, Benedict, giant formula to, do skin folds and all this stuff. And what I found is that they end up being within about 5 to 10% of each other.
Right.
Whether you go this completely, laborious, time-consuming route, or this other route. And then, at the end of the day, the vagaries of life, like how much people sleep or exercise on a given day, there's more than a 10% variation in that anyway. Right. So I usually just like that simple calculation, use that as a start, and then you just literally, take a photo of the person every 3 to 5 days and just look at that sequentially, and you'll kind of see what's going on with them. Ideally, their performance is improving, or at least maintaining. And if we aren't seeing body composition shifts, then we need to drop the calories a little bit. If we're seeing body composition shift, but too much performance degradation, then maybe we need to bump the protein up, really focus on the post-workout nutrition. And from there, we're able to really dial things in at a remarkably high level, but without a lot of nut sweat over the whole process. So, which I'm just lazy, so I like the easy route.
You can simply write stuff down and just check your body weight, and hop on a scale every couple days and check it out that way. I think Silent Mike has a question here.
Yeah, what about supplementation? Whether for the kind of diagnostic first 30 days or even performance, what's some of your favorite supplements?
Oh man, I mean the classics, like whey protein if people handle it well. Creatine is a given. There's lots of cool nutraceutical type stuff. Like if somebody is again like a shift worker and they end up maybe with some cortisol dysregulation, like doing some licorice root in the morning to help get their cortisol levels up in the AM, but then doing phosphatidylserine in the PM to get their cortisol levels down. But that starts getting really specific. Like out in the world of supplements, I don't see a ton of things that work on the performance enhancing side. There's like beta alanine, like everything that's in that kind of creatine phosphate pathway, the phosphagen pathway, anything that's propping that up, even ribose seems to be like a pretty legit option. But then beyond that, it seems to get banned immediately. GHB was amazing during the time that we had it. I remember buying GHB from like GNC and stuff like that. And
I remember taking that, and I fell asleep on a toilet. My brother's like, "What the fuck's the matter with you?" I'm like, "I don't know."
But I'm well rested. That's all I know. I slept 4 hours, and I feel like I slept like 20. But I mean, there's not a ton of stuff that, like, from a general performance standpoint, clearly caffeine in the right doses at the right times. But stimulants are a really easily overdone thing, and I've heard you guys talk about this stuff too. That you need to get into a mode where you can go into the gym and get some forward progress, but without it being complete death metal, headbutt the bar, blood dripping down your face.
Yep.
You just can't, as much fun as that is, you just can't do it day in, day out and continue to make progress. And that was part of the problem that I had when I first started kind of ramping up in powerlifting. That's what I wanted to do all the time. And like Danny and Rich would just literally like almost beat me to death. They're like, "You're a fucking idiot. Like you need to chill out and just calm down. And every set can't be you like bellowing like an orgasmic like water buffalo or something." So it's supplementation wise, definitely protein powders, for post workout stuff and just propping up the caloric load. Waxy maize starch, any type of liquid carbohydrate that's good in that scene, creatine, beta alanine. And then there's lots and lots of stuff for kind of specific, almost functional medicine purposes, but it gets really, really specific. I think there's a lot of stuff that works great for specific circumstances, but not for like a general recommendation.
Anything for inflammation, as you were mentioning earlier?
Oh man, fish oil clearly, and kind of dumb not to mention fish oil and vitamin D. Like those are some great ones to just be in the mix literally for everybody. Ideally getting vitamin D from the sun if you can get out and get 10, 15 minutes of direct sun on your skin most days. Like I really prefer it.
It's good for the tan too.
Way. It's good for the tan. Yeah, it's good for the chicks. Chubby tan fat looks better than chubby not tan fat. So whether you're lean or chubby, it's definitely better. Yeah, and then what was your question again?
It was about inflammation.
Oh, inflammation. There's a product called Zyflamend from a new chapter that is this super critical extract of a bunch of different herbs, curcumin, ginger, and a bunch of other COX-2 inhibitors. And that stuff is really legit as a anti-inflammatory.
COX inhibitors.
Yeah, COX inhibitors.
I'll stay away from that.
COX blockers.
Yeah.
Well, nutrition science seems to lag a lot of other scientific endeavors, and we all can't wait around for studies to prove an approach, one approach over another. We all are our own, science project. But how does dietary science relate to paleo? What kind of support are you seeing, and what kind of studies are you seeing that that confirm approaches that you've seen work with clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we end up, so people get very wrapped around the axle of like a randomized control trial kind of format. And in that context, I think there's about 12 randomized human trials with like a paleo diet that they've used. And all of them have been very beneficial. We've had some great results with that. But when a lot of the kind of paleo or evolutionary biology story, it's more of a parts and pieces approach, like looking at proposed mechanisms of why gluten causes problems in the gut. So you end up kind of cobbling that story together from different research, but there's more coming online. I think there's actually 16 paleo-related research grants under process right now. If there's you go to like NIH.gov research, and then you just search for paleo diet, then you'll see the things that are under process right now. And you can search for keywords like ketogenic diet or creatine or paleo diet. And so I think there's like not all of them are randomized control trials, but there's a bunch of different things that are underway right now. So we're definitely getting a lot more buy-in. It's honestly, from my perspective, it's a little bit of a sham that I'm the one talking a lot about this stuff. Like this stuff should just, like, evolutionary biology should be the background of all of medicine. Yeah. Like and really this whole paleo diet concept, if we're successful 10 years from now, I'm not going on podcasts talking about this stuff. Every physician that goes to medical school, every dietitian, they get a steeping in evolutionary medicine that is predicated on looking at like sleep, food, exercise from this evolutionary biology concept. So this should just be what is woven into medical education as a baseline. But for whatever reason, somewhere along the line, we thought that evolution didn't apply to humans. And, it applies to everything else except us. Although in the United States, only 16% of people believe in evolution. So that's maybe a problem. But, and to that point, it's interesting, in Northern Europe and Australia and New Zealand, paleo is accelerating, even though it's growing very, very quickly in the United States, it's growing even more quickly in some of these Northern European or Australia, New Zealand locations. And it seems to be getting better research buy-in in those locations too. So it may end up being this signal that kind of goes out to other locations and we get more buy-in, and then it comes back here at some point. But it's definitely growing very quickly. There's a lot of stuff that at the end of the day, we're going to discover, okay, tomatoes were not a problem in any type of autoimmune condition, even though alpha-tomatin passes the gut barrier and gets in circulation and potentially could be a problem. Maybe that's not a problem for anybody anywhere. So we're going to end up, finding some things that we were right about and some things that we were wrong about, but that's the usual scientific method. You create some hypotheses and you test them and see where it all plays out.
You touched on one point about being sort of in the forefront of this and going on podcasts to talk about paleo and all this stuff. And, you know, obviously when you're kind of the flashpoint of a particular amount of information that people hadn't been exposed to before, some people are going to think you're the Messiah and some people are going to think that you're the Antichrist. What would you say to both of those groups that would help them understand better where you're actually coming from?
Oh, man. Well, this maybe does sound somewhat messianic, but for a long time I've had this notion that I've had some information in my head that and not just me, lots of other people, Lauren Cordain, Stefan Lindeberg, like lots and lots of researchers, but I watched my parents die from things that I knew were preventable with some modifications with diet and lifestyle. My wife's mother died 3 months before I met my wife due to complications with rheumatoid arthritis. And one area that I think that we've, again, built a lot of credibility is the success that we've had with autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, a host of autoimmune diseases that standard medical treatment really isn't very effective with, and that we've been very, very effective with a paleo diet. Terry Walls is a professor of medicine back east. She was wheelchair bound with multiple sclerosis, ended up reversing the multiple sclerosis. She's had 4 clinical trials run with a paleo diet and multiple sclerosis, really remarkable results with that. And so my deal has been that I think I've got some information that could literally save people's lives. And I would meet people day in and day out that, they would just offhanded say, I've got MS, my mom has MS, and you're sitting there and you're kind of, it's almost like, you know that the person's house is going to burn down, but do you tell them yes or no, and so my deal has been to just try to get this information out to as large a number of people as possible so they can make the decision whether or not to try it, but at least they know that there's an option there. Because currently a lot of people don't know that there's an option, and a lot of people are sick and dying and suffering, perhaps unduly. And so I just want to get that information out there to as large an audience as I can, and then I can pull back and just coach MMA athletes and do jiu-jitsu. And, I love doing what I'm doing, but really I like being in a gym. Like, I'm just a lug nut. I like lifting weights. I like doing jiu-jitsu. That's the stuff I really like to do. But currently I feel like we have built a lot of momentum, and there's the potential for really helping a lot of people and really altering the way that we do medicine in the kind of westernized societies that would be a lot more effective and at least give people an option for that. So that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming from on this. And so for the people who look at me as a messiah, like, I'm going to check out at some point, there's going to be a gone fishing sign that's hung on my website when I feel like we've met enough market penetration that this thing is going to go and it's got legs and it's going to continue on without me. Then I'm out. And for the people that think I'm the Antichrist, then I will be departing at some point and just working in an MMA gym. And so I'll be gone at some point on that regard too.
I saw a couple years back, I saw they were playing an old episode of Jack LaLanne. They were playing, he was doing like some squats on a chair and just showing you how you can exercise at home. But he said a very similar point to what you just said. And he said something really profound that I thought was like, almost crazy in a way, but I got where he was coming from. And he said, I saw before my very eyes my dad kill himself in front of me, and I was like, holy shit, what's he talking about? And he meant with food. Right. He's like, my father killed himself with food and lack of exercise, and he's like, I'm not going to allow that to happen to me or anybody else I know. And he's like, let's get on with some exercise. He started banging out some push-ups. So your mission sounds very similar. And I think it's very important, and I think you're touching upon a lot of great things. And I know you've even saved your own life. Is that right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I was quite sick, and I was fishing around trying to figure out a better way to eat. And for me at the time, that was actually eating a vegan diet. But looking back, without laying too much blame on the vegan diet itself, I was also sleeping 3 hours a night, trying to go to med school, super low vitamin D levels. So there were looking back, a bunch of other lifestyle and sleep features that were clearly not, I was living like an asshole and suffering the consequences totally. And then, I've had to modify that stuff over time. But yeah, it definitely has benefited my life. At 42, I feel like I have really good performance, good body composition. I've got a 2-year-old daughter. My wife is 39 weeks pregnant, and so I'm going to have another kid here anytime. Thanks, man. Thanks. And I feel like I'll be a good dad for those folks. Like I'll be present and healthy and all that type of stuff, and that's pretty exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys have any more questions?
I believe that I am good. And I really appreciate you being on, Rob. It was
stoked to be on here. Very honored.
You have an outstanding podcast of your own called the Paleo Solution.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, and people should check that out as well.
Yeah, where else can people find you?
Yeah.
RobbWolf.com and then the Paleo Solution podcast are kind of the main places.
How much are you loving having a podcast? Because we love having this one. So
I enjoy it a lot. It's kind of funny though. Like 4 years of it. Sometimes I'm just kind of like, do people really want to hear me talk about the same shit? And they're like, I'm like, should I cancel the podcast? Are you guys bored with this? I'll just do like a blog post on it. And people are like, no, we love it. And I'm like, but I talk about the same shit all the time. Like, but we love it. And I'm like, okay, I'll keep doing it, man. But
yeah, well,
kind of wacky.
I think we've got you beat because we talk about nothing on here, and people like that even. Like the last episode, we talked about cereal, and it's like people are like, that's the best episode ever. Or like we talked about fucking Captain Crunch and Fruity Pebbles. So people just want to hear whatever, I guess.
Yeah, you never know what's going to resonate with people. So
what's that quote in the background on that thingy there? What's that say?
You know what? Those are 2 posters actually that when I speak, I'm on the Naval Special Warfare Resiliency program, and when I do speaking gigs for them, they do a big poster to know what's inside the room, and normally the speakers aren't able to take those away with them, and I've been able to talk them out of a couple of those. So optimizing health, performance, and longevity, Robb Wolf Naval Special Warfare Resiliency Program is basically what
awesome.
they say.
Very cool.
So
well, it's great
cool.
having you on the podcast, and good luck with everything, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks, guys. Huge honor being on. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, we're
Ooh, it's getting hot in here.
there. We go.
I hate to say it, but I was right.
About
handsome.
what?
I mentioned how people like take If It Fits Your Macros and flexible dieting way to the right side, and Lane Norton's not. I mentioned how people go, and I know nothing about Robb Wolf. I know who he is. I've heard his podcast, read a couple articles. I don't know much about him, but I know paleo people that are eating a pound of bacon and 3 avocados for breakfast are doing shit wrong. I win.
Yeah, I don't know. Not really. I don't think. I think when you eat the style of diet that he's talking about, I do think you can eat more calories. And the calories in, calories out thing. He kind of basically just said, for himself, in the beginning, he was able to kind of eat whatever because he was young and he had a huge energy output. And it was, later on, he kind of said he realized that it was a little bit more energy out type of thing. But
yeah, well, he mentioned that in the beginning, he was almost solely going off experience.
Right.
And then
I just think the truth is, the more that you stay on your diet, the more you can eat. I think you can eat a little bit more. I think you can have a little bit more play.
Well, you can
if you're avoiding ice cream and Pop-Tarts and shit like that.
Yeah, well, you can definitely in volume.
I thought it was interesting too that he said, about the bodybuilding style diet, which is something I always suggest to people. Because people are like, should I hop on low carbs like you're doing? I'm like, no, you shouldn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
If your energy output's big and
you go ask any CrossFitter that's super paleo, and they'll say, "No way, Robb Wolf would never say that," and he does. He believes he's way more open-minded than his followers.
Right. And I think that
you see that over and over again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
People take something just too far. They want to make a religion out of everything. I think that's a very
Mark
strong
mentioned it
human
too.
drive.
Is they only want to hear and hear one part of a video, one part of a podcast, one part of a message.
Or they hear half a message.
I think it also depends on who is posting these pictures of eggs and bacon and avocado. If it's someone who's big and they can, if they can handle those calories, then fine.
Right. Well, John Anderson's a different story.
Right.
Than the regular CrossFitter.
Right. And Burdick and I have run into this as well, suggesting keto diets. We've hung out with our buddy Gags on the East Coast, and he ordered an omelet that had like 8 or 10 eggs, and it's like, that's like, I don't know, 40 to 60 grams of fat.
It should probably be 2 meals.
And then there's cheese in there, and so you're not going to be able to really do much with 100 grams of fat in a fucking meal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Anybody almost.
Yeah, there's no one that's going to be able to handle that. And I think when you're talking about people trying to drop some body weight, at some point they're going to have to look at the amount of overall food they're eating.
Yeah.
And they are going to have to be a little bit conscious of that. But I think the genius of a keto diet or paleo diet is the fact that in the beginning, you don't have to worry about it, and you can still drop
That's
weight.
true.
You're just dropping some water. And
He
stuff
mentioned
like
something too that you and I always talk about is the mental part of a keto diet.
that. Right.
If you're not eating hot dogs and stuff, which you should probably avoid, but you're going to end
Always.
up eating more whole foods if you start
Right.
eliminating some carbs. And
Yeah,
he
you're-
mentioned that too. He's like, just the mental standpoint of
Right.
let's get back to some veggies and meat
Right.
is a huge step for, a typical American, let alone performance,
And
let
the
alone any other
advantage-
issue.
Advantage of a keto or paleo diet over a bodybuilding diet is the fact that you can probably say that you don't need to eat as often. With a bodybuilding diet, you pretty much there's not a lot of great ways of doing it. You pretty much have to eat every 2 or 3 hours, depending on your size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you pretty much need carbs and protein in every meal. And it's hard not to eat the fat because sometimes, it'd be nice to be able to throw in some fat.
It's
and some of
great
that stuff.
You and Jesse and other people that do ketogenic type diets always talk about trace carbs, and he mentioned trace fat.
Yeah.
And that's a little more how I eat.
Yeah. He said you're just going to get it incidentally.
Yeah,
basically.
a little bit of meat here, a little bit of meat there.
And John Anderson talks about that, like
Yeah.
accidental carbs,
Yeah, he gets
basically.
mad.
Accidentally, what did he say? Accidentally digested carbohydrates. Like, whoops.
So sad.
Sorry about that. I ate a fucking pie.
That's
A
a
whole
whole
pie.
Yeah, and I just think it's important for people to realize that, again, paleo or keto or even when doing a bodybuilding diet, it's not some magical formula to burn fat.
Well,
You're going to have to get a feel for it yourself. You're going to have to weigh yourself. You probably at some point going to have to weigh out your foods and pay attention to how many calories are in your meals. At some point, you're going to have to just pay attention to that at least a little bit to make
Yeah.
the progress that you're looking for.
Well, and step one for everybody, is to get back to some quality food, some real
Right.
food, some whole foods, organic or not, that's a whole different argument. Just
Right.
get something that looks like, when someone asks me like about paleo or about nutrition, like some high school kids or college athletes, I just tell them like, if the food looks like what it is, eat it. If it
Right.
doesn't, like what's in a Dorito? I don't
Yeah.
know. But a chicken kind of looks like a chicken, eat it.
Yeah, they used to say shop around the outside of the grocery store.
Yeah.
Try to avoid the middle
a good
aisles.
strategy.
What's that strategy on like Safeway's part or whatever though? Like why did they do that?
Why does everybody do that?
Yeah, why do grocery stores do that?
Because
I
I,
think
think
that's where
they
the
put
culture
because
of-
because more
perishables go around the outside because it's easier to stock.
Oh, maybe. I was about to say, like, is there some mental thing that people don't want to shop on the outside?
No, I
that's
think
what you
it's-
would imagine would be
no.
going on, a big conspiracy theory. That's
No,
what I'm getting
I
at.
honestly think it has to do with electronics and appliances.
Maybe
they
two. They all have
the
lamps.
wall, and then they have a fucking outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're able
that
to plug
too,
the
yeah.
fucking
Yeah, so they
refrigerator
can
in, so-
sprinkle your broccoli every hour or
yeah,
whatever
with
they
the
do.
water and all that shit. And
I love it when the
yeah.
thunderstorm starts. You're walking through, and then it becomes like you're at Disneyland,
You're in a tropical.
I love it, yeah.
You're on the Jungle Cruise at Disney.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, the Jungle Cruise walking through the broccoli aisle.
Still pretty amazed that he talked about a bodybuilding diet. I'm
Yeah.
still kind of blown away.
Well, that's what I mentioned in the beginning. I had a feeling that he would be way different than I expected, and
Yeah.
I like I said,
Well,
I
that's
don't know
true
a
of
whole
Lane
lot about
Norton,
him.
too.
Right?
Yeah,
He
when
always
we-
says like
yeah.
eat whole foods. Like these Pop-Tart eating motherfuckers are doing
Right.
it wrong. Yeah, get a Pop-Tart in every once in a while if it
Well, I think that people miss the point that a lot of the foods, a lot of the prepackaged stuff, some of it was done for convenience, but some of it is treat food.
Yeah, yeah.
It's dessert. It's whatever. And you don't need dessert for every fucking meal.
Yeah,
Right.
I think
You
it's
know?
great. Robb Wolf basically admitted that he was wrong about 7 years ago or whatever he said. about
Yeah,
some
he said
stuff.
he's
That's-
changed. Yeah,
that
he said-
takes a-
well, he mentioned that several times.
about a couple things,
Yeah.
and it's
And
that's huge. No one
that's
does
the
that.
message that people who hate on a particular thing never get.
Right.
They understand, what was being talked about several years ago,
Yeah.
and they don't understand what the current thinking is. And
Right.
so,
Yeah,
it's-
people are stuck on that.
right.
Yeah, we also noticed a lot of changes in Lane Norton from talking to him 3 months ago to now.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
that
little
was-
things.
Yeah, that was amazing. And it's not like he found any sort of crazy science.
Yeah, and he didn't switch sides. He just
And it's what we talk about here all the time. It's just him having more experience, him
Right.
working with more people. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys listened in to Katie Hogan at the booth, but she was fucking amazing.
I heard
People
a
are
little
coming
bit on
over and
Saturday,
asking
yeah.
about this or that, and I was like, oh, maybe she doesn't know. Maybe she doesn't know exactly what that wrap does, but she was fucking all over it. She knew what everything did. She knew what
Yeah.
it was for.
But I
She's
still
recommending diets and programs and shit too, because she's like works with so many different
Yeah,
people through
right.
CrossFit.
I still won employee of the weekend though, right?
No, she won.
She won?
Yeah.
You didn't have your ass in
and
booty
by the
shorts,
way,
dude.
just fuck Jesse Burdick. Fuck him. He's fired.
He's trying to sabotage me.
Nah, he tried. He tried to pull his kids into it, and he brought the
Yeah,
cute
the
little
cute
girls.
factor, huh?
Yeah, he brought the cute little girls around. But we all know Jesse Burdick's still a dick
Why did he do that?
at heart.
I have no kids to bring around. I should have brought a puppy. I'll bring a puppy next
10
time.
years I've
A
done this.
dick at heart.
Yeah, why'd you say that?
That's disgusting.
Dick
all right.
heart. Heart
No,
dick.
Jesse knows I hate him. He should know.
Your
that.
best friend and you hate him.
No,
That
but how great was
says
it?
about the
Him bringing
quality.
the twins over. That was cool.
They did more work than anybody else.
Yeah, they organized the
They organized the table so beautifully.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that picture.
That was
I was
great.
not there yesterday. I didn't. I
Yeah,
was there on
I don't know their
Saturday.
names. I can't get them apart. They're like twins, but kind of,
Casey
but
and
not
Sophia.
really. Yeah, but
Yeah,
I don't
they-
know which is which. I think Sophia was going nuts organizing the magazines.
I somehow mixed them up, and I shouldn't at this point.
Yeah,
but
they should probably. They slapped you.
I can tell the difference, and I don't see them all the time. So
I gave one of them $1 million.
I saw. She was
Yeah.
pretty excited. I was a little
Somebody gave me like $60.
Who was on it? I forgot to
and
look
then he
at like
gave
the
me like
person.
a $1 million bill, which was obviously fake. And I gave it to, I think, Sophia.
Oh, you messed up now.
you gave away your meathead millions.
Who was in
no,
the
I
middle
gave
of
it
it?
to Casey.
Who was in the middle of it? You know,
Oh,
like
I don't
Lincoln
know.
or whatever.
I don't know who the picture was, but she was really funny. She's like, if someone gave that to you for, a slingshot, you probably had to give them at least $100 back.
Yeah, at least in change.
Yeah, and change. That was amazing.
$1 million. But the sad thing is, like, by the time she's grown, like $1 million ain't shit.
What else we got going on?
I don't know, man. We slanging.
We got CrossFit Games coming up.
Yeah, about a week and a
I'm
half
going
away.
to Hawaii, so we'll have to record some more of these.
Yeah, catch up.
Mustard.
Catch up. Wait, isn't it ketchup? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Put that in your pipe. I think ketchup is a brand.
Yeah,
And
it has
ketchup. It's like tissue and,
ketchup.
I don't know.
Why can't you catch up?
We should make a company, with a C. That would blow people's minds.
Ketchup? And
Yeah.
it's got cat.
Every
Has cat in it.
Yeah, what the hell is going on with the CrossFit Games? We're going to go down there and
Yeah, we're
Do
going to
some
go down
burpees
there
or
and
something.
just, I don't know. I don't know why I'm there.
I don't either.
I will not be there.
No
It's going to be
CrossFit
hot.
Gamies?
It's going to be like 9 million degrees.
Oh, it's because CrossFit still just does this stuff outdoors.
Oh, my
Mostly.
Yeah.
So hot.
Hey, what was up with that
Not
picture
into
of
that.
you and Andy going rucking? You talk
Oh,
shit
yeah.
on rucking all the time, and then there you are rucking with
Our,
Andy.
our little walk that we were doing, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been walking here and there.
Well-
not every morning, but about every morning.
I actually listened to Robb talking to our friend Tim Ferriss the other day on Robb's podcast, and talking about how, like, if you're, say you're not into meditation, but there's a definite advantage to having some mindfulness time, thinking
Right.
about things, whatever, and taking a walk is the easiest way to do that.
Yeah, it really is. And it's going for a walk with my wife is cool, but I also like being by myself.
Who doesn't?
And it's a good way for me to organize thoughts and think about.
You got to be very careful about me time on a walk, though.
Do you remember? You guys may be older, but I remember like the very first time I was alone, like in my head, like fuck, I'm alone right now.
And you got scared.
No, but like,
Did you hold on?
well, think
grasp
about
the
like being
pillow?
a kid, like Quinn's always doing
yeah,
something.
Yeah, like Jake's like 10, and every
He's
once in a
never
while-
been alone.
Once in a while we leave him at home by himself.
Oh, that's a little, yeah, maybe. But I remember like getting into my car the first day I got my license.
Oh.
And I'm driving down the street.
Oh,
like,
you hit the freeway and you're like, whoa,
no, well, yeah, like just in my head, I'm like, I'm all alone. I do whatever I want.
all by myself.
Like when you're on timeout in your room, you're technically alone, but it's not the same. Your mom's on the other side of the door, and you're like, all right. Well, I got my license. I'm like, fuck, I'm alone. I'll do whatever I want.
I remember
my first time. That was the first time I ever
I used
thought.
to like that about being on my bike.
Yeah.
When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I'd
Yeah.
hop on my bike and I'm like, look, I can
You
just
feel free.
cruise down this street. I cruise down the next street. I was fat, so I didn't cruise down too many streets, but
On the flip side of that, I remember I was actually talking to a friend who has got married in the last year about the adjustments, and I remember that being one of the biggest adjustments about getting married is not being alone very much.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, you also mentioned your kids moving out and stuff too.
Yeah,
And
that's
having
that's
alone
the flip side.
alone again.
alone-ish part too. Like that's weird.
Yeah, that's the flip side. We've actually had somebody staying at the house the last couple of weeks, and it's weird to have people in your house again after having nobody in the house. And then my son and daughter-in-law are here from Canada for about 2 weeks starting Saturday. and that'll be interesting too. You know,
Yeah.
it's the same, but it's different. You know, it's definitely different than when they were living in the house all the time.
You're all excited, and then 5 days later, you'll be totally annoyed.
Exactly.
I'm sure he'll be annoyed with you. You'll be annoyed with him, but whatever. It's family. It's the way it goes.
My son is easygoing. My daughter-in-law, not so much.
Oh, well, at least he's easy.
If she's listening, I love you. So.
I need to go eat some food.
Yeah, we need to bring this one in for landing at about 1:30.
Gluten
Yeah, find me at Silent Mike with 2 Ks, Instagram, Twitters.
at Mark Smelly Bell. Multiply your hustle, multiply your muscle, and may all your shits be tapered.
I'm Jim McD, STTV. Follow us on Twitter to the show at STJimSack, Facebook /SuperTrainingGym. Thanks for being with us.
Subscribe to Power Magazine at thepowermagazine.com. If you choose the digital edition, you can catch up on all the great back issues, take your training to the next level with Slingshot products at howmuchyoubench.net, and look for BSN products including NO Explode at bodybuilding.com. Mark Bell's PowerCast is a production of supertraining.tv.